When the sun sets, the undead awaken. To slake their hunger, they feed upon the herd of unaware mortals. Right beneath our noses, the kindred clash against their rivals as they vie for control of the city of San Francisco. Are you strong enough to cheat final death and see another night? Vampire the Masquerade Rivals expandable card game from Renegade Game Studios.
Welcome to Vampire Wednesdays. You can't see me, but I am Sarah Erickson, VP of Sales and Marketing here at Renegade Game Studios, and I am behind this wonderful document that you are seeing.
I think they
here.
can see you. I think they can see you right now, actually. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everyone. Very excited to be here. So I am here joined by, of course, everyone knows, Matt Hyra, wonderful, amazing designer extraordinaire of Vampire the Masquerade Rivals expandable card game. How are you, Matt?
Great. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful. So you've been working very hard behind the scenes to make sure that everything is ready for Gen Con, which we are very, very excited about. And Gen Con is happening in just about a month. So if you're watching this, and we are both going to be there very, very soon. And so if you are also going to be there and joining us, make sure to go to the vampirecardgame.com and check out the Gen Con section to see all the awesome prizes we're giving away. I can't believe that we're just going to go right out of the gates with one of my favorite prizes of all time, which is the card for the first place.
Yeah, someone will be the Prince of Indianapolis, I guess. I don't know. Who knows?
Get to have their likeness on a card for all time. That is very cool.
Yeah, very cool. The first one.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big deal. And so what we wanted to do tonight, just to make sure that everybody has all of the possible information for the best chance that they can have at winning that amazing prize, plus all of the other stuff that we have that we're giving away. We're going to be talking about some card updates, minor little tournament updates from last week, and all that good stuff. But before we jump into that, I did just want to mention that Blood and Alchemy, the upcoming expansion that all of you pre-ordered through our pre-order campaign, that is actually delivering this week and next week in many regions, basically all over the world except for the US. So we are still dealing with amazingly terrible shipping issues in the US here, unfathomably bad, and we're just waiting. So we are really hopeful that we will have those expansions to all of our US friends very soon. But everybody else in the world, watch your doorsteps because it's coming very soon. So with that, just before we dive head into all of these sort of really specific changes to some cards and some rules, do you want to talk about the changes to the tournament rules based on some feedback we got?
Yeah. So we shared the tournament rules, the organized play rules for tournament events last week, and got some good feedback. One of the bits of feedback was that perhaps our round times, the time for a 2-player game, a 3-player game, and a 4-player game, was maybe a little short for what is definitely going to be everyone, including our own, experience at a tournament for Rivals. So we are adding additional time, and some of you may have already noticed, we've been updating the document. We won't publish it officially with the version 1.0 until probably next week or so. We want to have it out around a month ahead of time. But so we upped the 2-player games from 30 to 35 minutes, the 3-player games from 50 to 60 minutes, and the 4-player games from 75 to 90. Now we do, and we do that because, some people who show up at the events will probably have never played in real life. They may have played the season 0, and it's just going to take everyone a little getting used to the tournaments. So we wanted to make sure we weren't being too oppressive for the very first event. Once everyone is a little bit more comfortable, we may knock those back to our original because we still think that those are valuable for larger events, but we wanted to give a little extra time for the very first event to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Wonderful. Yeah, so if you have any other questions, thoughts, anything about that, you can go and find those tournament rules posted on the Vampire website. And if you want to post and chat about it, we really encourage you to go check out our Discord as well. And that's a great place just to find other people to discuss all things Vampire the Masquerade Rivals expandable card game. So now that we got that out of the way, this is the main feature of this evening, is talking about some rules updates that are really focused on our competitive hardcore tournament players, because we know that you're the ones who care the most about the really specific rules, making sure everything's right when those big prizes are on the line. So we just need some little tweaks, some things on specific cards, and then some more general rules clarifications as well. And Matt is going to tell us all about them. So do you want me to share my screen, and can we get a link to that posted in the chat here so everybody can follow along if you'd like to?
There's the link. Good.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So that's a document we're looking at right now. And the very first thing on here, just like I said, some card wording updates. And I see that on Dragon's Roost, there's just a little tiny tweak. Do you want to talk about that? It says, if ready, you may move your leader to the streets to block a foe's attack, including ranged, and gain 1 prestige.
We got some feedback already earlier today from someone who said, hey, maybe put the changes on the cards in red, so that's real easy. So
Very nice.
yeah. So we could just kind of
feedback.
Jump right to it. So Dragon's Roost, we wanted to clarify, because the original card just said block any attack. And of course, with ranged attacks, that was a big question. And then also people thought, oh, well, does that mean that you can block your own attack? Well, that was never part of the rules. So we wanted to just clarify that and just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So it's only, the Dragon's Roost can only be used by a leader to block a foe's attack. But because any attack would include range, it includes ranged. And so that is the added words to that.
So really nothing has changed on this card at all.
It
just
hasn't actually changed the functionality. The intent is really, the intent was that, no, you can't block your own attack. I mean, we didn't say that specifically. So now here you go. We say it more specifically. So
yeah, that one's pretty straightforward. I'm sure that's how most people were playing it anyway.
We expect that, but that most people were playing it, you know, they wouldn't, why would you block your own attack? It doesn't make sense, right? So, you know, but there you go. Now you have it in black and red, I guess.
Black and red for sure. Awesome. So this next little minor update for the PR firm: ongoing pay 1 prestige, gain 1 agenda. Use only if a scheme you played has succeeded this turn.
Right.
Interesting little addition there.
Yeah, and that wording isn't that much different. It's just used in a different way, because we realized that the card didn't look like an activated ability. It looked more like a triggered ability that lets you make a payment to do a thing, and maybe that could trigger, you know, and maybe you could trigger it twice per turn, because, you know, that's what people would normally think of with triggers. But in our game, activated abilities are only once per turn no matter what. So we just rearranged this card to make it more obvious that it's an activated ability, and therefore only once per turn.
Yep.
But of course, if you have multiple of them, you can activate each of them. So there you go.
I can see why that would get pretty out of hand otherwise. Yep. Pretty clear now. Awesome. Primogen. So this one you clarified during an attack instead. So exert 3 influence attached to the acting character this character has +1 influence. During attack, this character deals +1 damage to characters with a title. So
Right,
not
right.
when would that not be true? What were you trying to clarify here?
Well, yeah, there are some cards that can deal damage without being an attack. Things like Smoke 'em Out and a few and
Hmm.
a couple of others. So it was not the intent that you could just add damage to anything. It also it's just there to clarify when that ability is relevant. Um, Non-attack things don't really get damage bonuses, and that wasn't clear on this card, so we made it clear.
Seems to work out now. That's great.
Yep,
The next one, scoped, point 30 to 06.
30-06. Yeah.
30-06. Okay, I
Yep,
don't
yep.
do a lot with guns. All right. During your intel step, you may play this card face up as your attack card to add +1 intel to this attack. So let's talk about that one, Matt.
Sure. Yeah. So this one, it ended up being kind of a weird space in that intel happens before attack card, and so this one was creating confusion about, oh, how can I get, don't I have to have intel before I play my attack card? And it was something that during playtesting the attack phases, you don't typically spell out every attack phase you go through. You kind of just play your card and do what it says. But for tournament play, we wanted to make sure that the card made perfect sense in the attack sequence because, tournament players are sticklers and we like that. So we changed the wording up so you actually play this card during your intel step. Therefore, the intel that it grants is actually applicable. And of course, because it's your attack card, you can't play another attack card. So it's really just changing when you play it to make it make more sense.
Yep, that definitely
And
helps.
we realized that people weren't playing it wrong. It was just people who are first learning the game. It didn't quite make sense because you see, oh, intel step, then attack card. So it didn't make that intuitive sense to people. Better to just make that change so that people can learn it easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will definitely help. And especially in a tournament setting, like you said, just making sure everything is crystal clear makes it so
Yeah.
much better.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense. All right. Slap in the face. Deal physical to the attacker instead. Add this
Yes.
character's physical to the damage. So what was going on with this card?
Right. Well, previously the card didn't have the word instead. And we thought that it would be pretty clear that the card was only doing physical damage, but by a strict reading of the rules, the card has it reacts to the attack types of social and mental. Well, a normal reading, a first reading through the rulebook would have you believe that this card would also do social and mental damage back because it has those icons in its card type bar. But in fact, the intent of the card was that it only does physical. We did spell it out, but it wasn't crystal clear that excluded things. So we added the word instead to make sure people knew that the slap in the face only deals physical damage and does not also deal social and mental damage. So
yeah, you don't want that to be abused. It's already pretty good.
not bad.
All right. Street Preacher. If ready, relentless, pay 1 prestige, move to the streets to block a foe's non-ranged attack against any target in the streets.
Right.
Foe's non-ranged attack. So were we worried about blocking an attack and ranged attacks here?
Yeah, well, it was Street Preacher and Dragon's Roost are similar, but they had different wordings. And the different wording was intentional, but it kind of threw people off a little bit. Again, we wanted to make sure people knew that you can only block a foe's attack. And because the Street Preacher is a vampire himself, who does not have the guard keyword, he can't block ranged attacks. So we just wanted to make that more obvious, because Dragon's Roost said any attack, and this one said, move to the streets to block an attack. A subtle difference, which probably was lost a little bit, but because Street Preacher is a vampire who doesn't have guard, he cannot block ranged attack. The Dragon's Roost had said any attack and was a leader ability, so we wanted that to be a little more open-ended, a little more powerful for your leader.
I can see how you're really drilling down into being very, very precise, which is so important for a card game like this. And I really appreciate too that we're able to update these rules, and we have this awesome card database that'll let people go and look for all of this errata as we go, that we can update at any time. So if people are wondering in the middle of a tournament situation, this is the cleanest place to go find all the changes, but you can always just look up a card and see what it says.
Yeah, we
online.
should be able to get this stuff into the card database before the tournament, so that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a really good reference.
Yep.
All right. Yusuf Kaya, mend one on each titled character you control, including in torpor. Oh, yep. Okay. So you can't do it to your opponents.
Right. Yeah, that was, I mean, we put a little, FAQ in the rule book about it, but we thought, let's just get it on the card to make it easier. Originally, the card had said in your coterie or in torpor, which could have just said you control, right? Because you control characters in your coterie and in torpor. Again, we just mentioned torpor here because it's something that people forget a lot of times, especially because characters in torpor keep their titles. So it's just very important that people remember that. So just saying you control is a lot easier than saying characters in your coterie or in torpor, because then when you see in torpor, you might think, is that everyone's torpor? Here, we're making sure that it's not.
Nice. All right, so this next one is a little bit different. There's not actually a change to the card, but there's a change to the FAQ in the rule book. So just a little bit of clarification there, so we can kind of go past.
Yeah, that one's self-explanatory. It wasn't when it was written to say everyone always gets to exert influence during a scheme. This made it seem like only chosen players could do it. Really, we were just saying, even if you're a chosen player, you can still choose yes or no exertions on the scheme. You don't have to be for it just because you were chosen. That's all that says.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then same thing with the old post office, no changing wording on this card either. Yeah, this is mostly to the difference between placing a card and playing a card. It's really the same thing, but one is you're resolving the card for its text, and then placing a card is more of a mechanical thing you're doing for another purpose, right? Old post office is repurposing a card, so you're not really playing it. So for instance, you don't have to worry about clan-only symbols. If you've got your only Brujah in torpor, you can still use a Brujah only clan card because you're not playing the card, so the clan symbol is irrelevant. The BP of your leader is also irrelevant. So if you happen to be playing a 2 BP leader, you can still play a 3 BP card face down, place it face down. And because play and place are so intertwined, we want to make sure that people know that placing a card face down does trigger the text of Govna. That was the intent. We didn't have the wording on Govna completely show that, but we just want to make sure people knew. Helpful. And then coup de grace is the last one in that group. Yeah, this is one that we got a few questions on Discord, and we really appreciate that. When we say that you defeat a character, it wasn't instantly clear that meant remove all their blood. A lot of times people thought, oh, do they just take their current blood and go to torpor, and that still is counted as defeat? Well, the rules of defeat say, you defeat a character when they're at 0. So we just wanted to let people know, since we got that question a few times. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Awesome. So those were all just cards that were in the base game, and then we
That
did
was in
have,
core set, right?
yep, just a couple little clarifications here for Blood and Alchemy, which is coming out very soon.
Yeah. Yeah, so Jacob Frost and Peer Pressure both had parenthetical text. Because we didn't have any effects that counted like your entire party, and we wanted to make sure that people knew that you counted the active attacking character. The problem there in hindsight is when you see parenthetical text on one card, you might wonder, oh, well, does that mean if a card doesn't have it, that you don't count that character? And so we wanted to clarify that the parenthetical text was just a reminder. We're going to remove it for future printings. So yes, you always count all your characters when characters are being counted in a party.
Makes sense now.
Including the attacker. Yep.
Well, great. So those are our really specific card changes. And then, as I mentioned before, we had just a couple general rules clarifications. If you just want to run through some of these in general really quick.
Yeah, we don't want to read all
about
of these. I mean, I can just kind of give you the highlights. Does that sound good, Sarah?
That's
Maybe
perfect.
if you have any questions, go ahead. And certainly if anyone has any questions or wants me to clarify any particular point, they can. So activated abilities, some people missed the fact that exhaust abilities are also activated. They can only be used during your action phase. That is in bold. It was mentioned at one point in the when talking about the madhouse that only that activated abilities can only be used during your action phase, but it should have been hit a little harder on the head earlier than that. So yeah, so we're just clarifying activated abilities only during your action phase. You can't use ones during your start phase or end phase unless it's, of course, unless you're taking damage, because you can do damage prevention and mitigation at any time you're taking damage. Yep. And agenda flipping. This is actually one that people should look at for the tournament. Your agenda card remains face down as long as you want it to. And if you are, defeating citizens and SAD, or even knocking out rivals, vampires, you can collect agenda, but until you flip your agenda, you can collect agenda on your face down agenda card. And then you can flip your agenda face up at any time for whatever reason or no reason at all. You can even do it during the final resolution of, say, a scheme, or you could flip your turf war at near the end of an attack while someone is putting their character into torpor, something like that. So you don't have to show your agenda 100% before the action. You can do it during the action, and that's fine to get the triggered agenda gain from your agenda. Make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And it adds a little bit of extra secrecy. That's kind of interesting.
Indeed, yeah. Aggravated damage. It was just a question we had received a few times on Discord that old aggravated damage isn't tracked. So whatever damage you're currently taking is the only thing you have to worry about. If at least one of the damage is aggravated that knocks out your vampire, they're going to be burned. If they took a lot of aggravated damage before, no, not a problem. Your character, it only matters what damage they're taking that knocks them out. Okay.
Yep, that's helpful.
Yep.
Cool. Any of these other ones touch on?
Attaching retainers. This is to let people know kind of what our thinking was on how retainers work. A lot of retainers have like a one-shot ability, like draw one card, right? That's not an ongoing thing. So those things happen whenever you attach, but there is a card like Bong Chow Park that says does not trigger attach effects. That means if there's a one-shot thing like a Playthings agenda, right? Playthings agenda, when you attach a citizen, gain one agenda or draw one card. Those are one-shot effects. You don't get those attach effects. But the things like attributes, disciplines, and bonus BP, those are effects for simply being an attachment. They're ongoing. So they're not triggering, they're just happening because it's an attachment, right? It's more ongoing. So
yeah, so
hopefully that
really
makes
it's
sense.
just versus ongoing.
Yeah,
Does make sense.
yeah,
Yep.
yep. Even though we don't, you can hopefully tell what the difference between what a one-shot thing is and what an ongoing thing is. If it's something like an attribute or a discipline, is not going to do you any good if it lasts for 1 second and then goes away. So there you go. Attacking claimant to the Prince of the City title. Just a couple of extra things because there have been a few questions. You don't have to leave an exhausted party member behind because this is not a standard attack you're making. You're making it off turn, so you're not going to be moving your vampires around like you could during your own turn. Therefore, you don't have to leave any exhausted party members behind. And you can attack from the Haven. I think that was explained. We just decided to mention it here. And of course, even today got this question, the claimant doesn't mend the damage at the end of the action. The attacks you're making against the claimant are real attacks with real damage and real consequences. The part in the rulebook people were wondering about, it just says, if the claimant is defeated, they don't gain the title. So we didn't specifically say they keep the damage, but we figured that's the natural course of action. We just clarified it here to make sure everyone knows that.
So if people have questions, anybody listening here, anybody else listening later possibly, do make sure you post those because we really are paying attention and we love to get that kind of thing. So
yeah,
we will answer them and make sure it's clear for everybody. We appreciate that.
Yep. BP requirements. We're, when Blood and Alchemy comes out, there's going to be some -1 BP, -1 blood potency. So just wanted to let people know if a vampire's blood potency is reduced, that will not knock a title off of them or anything else that may require a certain amount of BP. It does affect the kind of attack cards they can play and reactions they can play, but anything that's already attached does not get removed when someone's BP goes down.
Very nice of you.
There you go.
That's good.
Conspiracy, yeah. So conspiracy, the rules in the rule book say that you can do it at any time. It didn't, it meant, during any of your turns, right? We may have used imprecise language there and wanted to just clarify that you cannot resolve a conspiracy during another action or event. That's the big one here. And I think that's pretty much the big thing you need to know for that. A lot of the other things mentioned here are very rare items. So discard piles. Yep, discard piles. This was mentioned in the tournament rules as well. So I don't know if it needs to be here too, but we'll just put it here just to better to have it in 2 places than in no places, right? So your discard pile is face up in public knowledge. If someone wants to see it, you got to show it. Discarding cards for intel. We didn't have a ton of rules on this in the original, but people wanted a little bit more information. So basically, the person whose turn it is can ask for help. You can offer help. They choose who they want to accept the help from, and you can't over discard for intel. So if someone needed 2 intel to make an attack, you can't discard 4 cards to give them +4 intel. There you go.
Makes sense. That's a good clarification for sure.
Right. Effect precedence. This is covered in the rules, except for maybe if 2 effects are at odds, can't overrides can. That's pretty standard in trading card games, wouldn't you say, Sarah?
Oh yeah, everyone I can think of right now. That makes sense.
We figured that most tournament players would be used to that, but we figured we might get a few tournament noobs, so we're more than happy to spell that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's great. If you've never been in a tournament, you're coming to Gen Con, that's fantastic. Feel free to let us know. We're happy to answer any questions that might come up. I know tournaments are a little bit alien and do things a really specific way. So we like to make sure everybody has what they need to make that successful.
Yep. Next thing is end phase. In the core rulebook, we mentioned that exhaust abilities can't be used during your end phase. only because we then went on to say that except for damage mitigation like the vagrant. But really what we should have said was you can't use any activated abilities during your end phase. So this just kind of reiterates what we had said before. You can't use any activated abilities except for damage mitigation, because you can use damage mitigation whenever you take damage, no matter what phase it is. There you go.
Yeah. Very clear now. That's always good.
And fear tokens. This is a blood and alchemy thing. Just letting people know that multiple fear tokens doesn't have any benefit over a single fear token. You're going to remove all the fear tokens at the start of your turn. So that's it.
All right, fear. That sounds exciting. Looking forward to that.
Ongoing cards, we just wanted to clarify where these go. We did mention in the rule book when talking about setup and things like that, where to put your haven. We didn't mention it in the ongoing section because of course we already mentioned it. So why would you need to mention it again? Well, we probably should have mentioned it in the ongoing section. So this is just writing that wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else in here that's pretty new? Reactions maybe?
Yeah, reactions that hit back. So these are the cards like slap in the face, reaction cards that hit back. So as everyone knows and is clear in the rules, shields don't transfer to the new target. So let's say someone sucker punches. Let's say that someone attacks you. You play a reaction that's going to hit back. They use a targeted, they flip over a targeted attack like sucker punch. If that attack strikes back at the attacker, it still resolves even if the original defender is no longer the defender, because they're still in the combat, right? It's a party. That's what's nice about being in a party, right? So you got other people to back you up. But nice. Shields don't transfer, but the strike back still resolves. That's the best. Yep. Revealing information. This is especially if you manage to get a look at someone's hand. You can't show it to other people. You can't write it down. You can't announce them, flipping through them one by one. Can't do anything that's too obvious. Once you've given the cards back, you can say whatever you want, and they may or may not believe you. So that's all this is telling you. There you go.
All right.
Yep.
Very important things to remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
Round one rule expanded. So I'm sure everyone knows in the first round of the game, you cannot attack someone who has yet to take their first turn. That was in the rules. We expanded that to include targeting or even dealing damage to vampires. So you just cannot affect someone else's vampires until they've had a turn. That's basically it. Yep.
That's a nice one. I like that addition.
You can target a player, but you can't target their vampires. So
leave my vampires alone.
Yep. Scheme and prestige totals. This is just clarifying a little bit in the rule book. It goes through a lot of examples and whatnot, and it seemed pretty good, but there were still questions. So you can temporarily hide your prestige when you're deciding how much to hold and how much to bid, right? So you do have to tell people the truth about how much your total prestige, but you don't have to show them your prestige once you're hiding prestige in hand to use during a scheme. Okay.
Fantastic. I did just want to mention we do have a couple of great questions in chat. So let's get through just these last few and then we'll grab those questions. So if anyone else has questions, pop those in there and we will get to them very shortly.
Okay.
So
great.
Anything else you wanted to mention on these last few? Stealing prestige?
Stealing prestige, yeah. You have to take someone's original color, then, and then you can take it. And then if they don't have their own, you can take whatever color they have. Superficial damage. Yep. This is just people had some questions since they saw superficial in Blood and Alchemy. Just letting people know that superficial aggravated ignores attributes, but still can't reduce them below 1 blood. So you're not really going to burn somebody if there was a way to make aggravated damage also superficial.
Yep.
Yep. And then torpor, vampires and torpor, can't be targeted by effects that not specifically mention torpor or character you control. And characters in torpor aren't in your haven. They can't be attacked. That's in the rule book, but we just want to mention they're also not in your haven. So, and then lastly, yeah, unspent actions. This actually is in the Blood and Alchemy rules, but we wanted to make sure people knew it prior to the event. You can choose to not spend some of your actions. You're never forced to make attacks, draw cards, or play cards during your turn. You can just say pass if you want to. So, yep.
That's an important thing to remind people of. That sometimes is very handy.
Yep.
Fantastic. So to jump into some of our questions, I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen here.
I guess we can go back to our pretty faces, huh?
I suppose so. All right. So this first question from Ornithopteryx, awesome name, is, was it ever clarified that you can't or can declare a ranged attack even when not playing a ranged attack card?
Yeah, we actually did clarify. Well, in the rules it says you can just choose one of the 4 attack types, and then you may play a card of that type. So I think people just thought it sounded a little weird to make a ranged attack without a card, but that is part of the rules. We did explain that on Discord probably a month ago when it first came up. But the answer is yes, you can. And I suppose that's something we could add to the update, maybe. Sarah, would you say?
I think it's definitely worth considering. I love great questions like that.
It is in the rules. You can just choose an attack type. You may play a card. So if you choose range and don't play a card, you're still making a ranged attack. So you just don't have any attribute to add to it. But there are some characters who can still do pretty well even without any without an attribute adding to it. So that is a good question. And yep, you can do it.
Excellent. Excellent. Very cool. It looks like we're having some minor technical difficulties. So, there's our faces. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Katie. She's amazing. She fixes all our problems. Fantastic. And our next question is from Awesome as Coyote. Hello, always good to see you. So a question I have seen a couple of times with Throat Rip. If I have 3 characters in my party with potents, but one has 2 potents, so a total of 4 in the party, is it +4 damage or +3 from the number of potents in the party?
I think, doesn't it? I forget the wording now. I'll have to look it up in the database here real quick.
I think it's totally understandable. That's why we have a database.
Yeah. We fixed it. All right, hang on one
Yes,
second.
We did. Well, Katie fixed it.
I think it says +1 damage for each potence in the party. So, and it's thinking about it.
Slowly but surely, we will answer your questions.
Eventually, we will. Yeah, when we get around to it.
That's right. Unless you happen to have.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we're good.
All right, +1 damage. Oh, no. Yeah, it's +1 damage for each character with potence in this party.
So it's only +3.
So I think that's pretty, it's +1 damage for each character with potence in this party. That means it doesn't matter how much potence they have, whether it's 1 potence, 2 potence, or the dreaded 3 potence, which no one has right now. Each character is only counted once, right? So no matter how much they have, each character is +1, which of course, including the attacker.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of those cards that we wanted to make sure people didn't confuse because of Jacob and peer pressure.
Yeah, well, let us know if that answered your question, if that makes sense. Hopefully that's what you were wondering about. And that one sounds like we've got that pretty figured out.
I think that one is pretty good. If people had a question about it, I don't know. I don't think that one needs to go into the update, but
I think people were just hopeful.
Yeah. Right. Really, it does enough damage already. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. That's all right. It would be so exciting. Maybe in the
Mhm.
future you can make something like that. Fantastic. So, any other last minute rules questions? These have been great. We really appreciate these. So, if you have anything that you've been wondering about, please pop that in the chat. And just a few other little minor things while you're thinking about it and typing furiously. We are going to be doing this Gen Con event, and we originally had really hoped to get Blood and Alchemy to everybody ahead of time so that you could play and test and do all that great stuff. But since obviously it's not going to be to everyone as soon as we had hoped, we are still going to allow it to be legal at Gen Con. But we've prepared so that we can post all of those cards on our database so you can see them, start thinking about it, start crafting your plans with those new decks, and hopefully that gives you enough of a head start. And we will keep you informed as we get more information about our shipments that should have been here a very long time ago. And hopefully they will be here soon. All of those games are sitting in Chicago right now. So Chicago by night, I blame you.
Worst case scenario,
sketchy.
pick it up on Thursday at Gen Con, right? At
We
the booth,
really,
right?
really hope that that is not the case, but as we get
Yeah.
closer, we will let you know what the options are and keep you informed as much as possible. But at this point, we are still very hopeful that we'll be able to get to everybody in time. So we're getting close. I don't see any
Yeah.
other last minute questions. So Matt, thank you so much for being here. Always wonderful to hear more about what you're thinking about the game and how you're making sure everybody has all the clarification they could possibly ever want, which is
Mhm.
wonderful. And these documents are posted. So if anybody wants to dig even deeper into them in the future, you're welcome to do that. And they're live documents. We'll be updating these as we see things in the Discord channel and anywhere else. So thank you all for posting and joining us. And we will see you next week on Vampire Wednesdays. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.